Hi, this is Pete Lyons with Let's Play Salesforce, and in tonight's Einstein Analytics video, we continue our coverage of the Winter 20 release along with Katie Augustus from Salesforce. So now we're going to welcome back Katie Augustus to the channel. Not only are we always happy to have guests, but especially when they come from Salesforce, because they can actually speak to the truth of what this product is. I'm just a commentator, so don't take my word for it. So we're going to be talking about the new homepage and the new onboarding functionality. Katie, do you want to go ahead and say hi to everybody and then cue things up with kind of a history of documentation, onboarding, and the ramp-up process for, how to develop skills in Einstein Analytics?
Sure thing. Thanks, Pete. Hey, everyone. My name is Katie, as Pete said. I'm a product manager on the Einstein Analytics team. My teams own onboarding and education, as well as our brand new home experience, which you can see on the screen today. I'm super excited to be walking you through the latest and greatest in the winter release on both sides, both onboarding and home. And, Pete, what you asked me to do is talk a little bit about the history of onboarding. And actually, I think that, the history of onboarding kind of parlays into the incentives behind both onboarding and home. So, when we first started our onboarding journey and we first formed our team, we took a good hard look at what was available to support our Einstein Analytics users. And we had a ton of documentation out in the world, but our resources were really disparate. We had PM webinars, we had help content, we had some videos here and there. And we didn't really have a good way of bringing all of that together in a cohesive, logical, kind of product journey-driven way. And we certainly didn't really have it integrated into the product experience so that users could get the help that they needed where they needed it without having to change contexts. And so over the course of the last few years, we've really focused on bringing those resources into the product, better organizing them, and making it a much easier, more seamless flow for our users. And what you'll see actually in the winter release as well is that while we've laid the foundation over the last few years of bringing in help through our help menus, through welcome mats, through modals in the app, we've gone a step further. We're beginning to integrate Trailhead into the learning experience in app. We're super excited about that. We're bringing more connected, streamlined learning journeys into the product as well. And we're also, what you saw in the summer release and will continue into winter, we're also opening up our onboarding resources to builders to actually provide onboarding to their end users so that you can actually teach your end users not only how to use the product, but how to consume the content that you're building. And we think this is a really powerful enhancement that's really going to help drive adoption and really build enthusiasm around the dashboards and analytic experiences that you're building. So I'll do a quick walkthrough of what we've got that's new in the winter release. So one of the first things that you'll notice in the new winter release experience is that the formerly known as Learn tab is now called our Learning Center. I'm going to open up my Learning Center, and you'll see that we've actually redesigned the content that's available in this area of the Analytics Studio. Where last release in the summer, you saw our first foray into your learning journeys with 4 in-app videos, short videos to kind of whet your appetite for each of these activities. In the winter release, we've actually gone a step further and provided real kind of micro learning journeys right here in the product. So if I want to learn the basics of how to bring in my data, I can actually start my learning journey here in the app. We've provided some really basic content to get you started and give you some context around the actions that you want to take. And you can kind of progress your way through this content and through each of these tiles as a part of this in-app experience. We track your progress as you go. So as you engage with each piece of content, you can see how you're moving through that path. And it really helps new users get the foundational knowledge they need to really, get their feet wet and feel comfortable in the product as they're starting off their journey. Now, Pete, you and I always talk about kind of the foundational resources that we've built over the last few years, and this is where we've put them front and center. The learning map, the Learning Adventure app, they've always been available through the help menu or as an app, available as a template for the Learning Adventure app within your org. But for the learning map, for example, we provide a link right here. So if you're in your learning center, you forgot the ever so pithy Einstein Analytics learningmap.com URL, fear not, it's available to you right here, and you can open it in a new tab. So you can always reference it readily from the product itself. We also provide quick links to our help portal, to our best practices page within the learning map. So if you're a more advanced user and you want to jump right into best practices, you can do so from here. Of course, you can always access the Trailblazer community. Just actually quick shout out to the Trailblazer community, which has over 35,000 members. This is one of the most amazing resources that's available to Einstein Analytics users. And even to our product teams, we're so grateful for all of the folks who are constantly asking questions and contributing back to the community. And the Trailblazers are really the lifeblood of this experience. And so we really want to make sure that folks who are, new to their analytics journey, or even folks who've been along that path for a while now, are really joining the community, getting engaged, because it is a tremendous, it's just a tremendous thing to be a part of. And I know, Pete, you are an active contributor there, so thanks for all that you do. One last kind of bit here as I scroll down, this is some placeholder content for the time being, but one thing that we also introduced in the summer release is this idea of what's new. So in the Learning Center as well, we also highlight all of the new features, or the top features that you should be mindful of in the latest release. We know release notes are an incredibly powerful resource, but sometimes it can be hard to read through all of that, and we want to make sure those highlights are readily available to you so you can always reference what's new in this Learning Center as well.
I have an anecdote to share about that. I focus extremely heavily on release readiness. It's something that we focus very heavily on internally. I am a consultant, and it's my duty to be able to brief my customers on the latest and greatest. And there used to be a problem in my office where occasionally I would hear someone say, oh, I'm having so much trouble doing X, Y, Z. Oh, well, why aren't you doing it this way? They say, since when was that a thing? And I say, oh, well, since like 5 releases ago. Where have you been? And so for the last several years, we have internally focused extremely heavily on release readiness. I just presented at my local user group, where I'm a co-leader, on the Winter 20 release notes, along with members of my team from the company I work for. And what actually really started this was a moment in Einstein Analytics. So for those of you who are around for the Spring 16 release, you know how easy it is to hit Control-E and get to the code editor? That was introduced in Spring 16. And prior to this, we had this like /insight/lenses.apexp page that there were like 3 different text blocks that you would post different pieces of code into, and this really clunky file navigator thing that never seemed to give you what you needed. This is how we would manipulate our dashboard JSON. And with the Spring 16 release, we introduced Control-E, which is what we all know and love today. And I didn't know about this because I was not release ready, because I was a noob and I just didn't know any better. And part of the release process was that as soon as you move a single widget on your dashboard, that dashboard is no longer available in insights.apexp. It's poof, gone forever. So I was building a giant wall of numbers also because I was a noob and I didn't know maybe I should use better visualizations to express our data. It was just a wall of numbers that really should have been like a pivot table. And we decided we had to add a column to it. But I was so afraid I was going to lose my dashboard if I modified it in the UI that I actually went in and moved 45 different widgets over 6 pixels by editing their JSON one by one, while I waited for the case with Salesforce to get back to me on why my dashboards were disappearing. They eventually got back to me and said, well, this is expected functionality as cited in the release notes that hit production 2 weeks ago, and you should know this because, like, really, you're a consultant. And I felt so bad. I'm like, man, dude, learn how to be a good Salesforce implementation partner. And I vowed right then and there, never again, we will be release ready. And this is why I do the entire Einstein Analytics sneak peek series. So be release ready, and to see the release notes actually in app is just a huge asset to us. We can be aware of the different changes that we're going to see. This is a rapidly evolving product, and we can expect that 3 times out of the year we're going to get all of these changes. So best to stay up on them. That's my anecdote. Katie, back to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Pete. I know that is a pain that unfortunately a lot of people are familiar with. And so just to kind of double down on the release notes, I do want to point out that actually in setup, let me get over to our new analytics setup. We also gave a makeover to our Einstein Analytics setup page. We've incorporated those same learning module tiles here, so you get additional support during setup. The carryover is that, admins need that info as well, so we've embedded all of those new release insights right in the setup experience as well. So regardless of where you are, what your function is, you want to learn about what's new in Einstein Analytics, we're putting it where you work, so you can avoid that prior pain. Since we're in setup, I do want to call out that we really revamped the education here for admins. Setup can be really complicated. We do have some basic best practices that we've included here in your setup, but we've also provided a whole learning tile here with kind of classic troubleshooting. So we've worked closely with support to really understand where our customers are running into some common errors and provide some basic troubleshooting recommendations right within the setup experience. So we're hoping as well that with these updates that we can really alleviate some of the challenges and pain points that folks have been experiencing during their basic setup. So some good enhancements here. We're continuing to double down on the setup experience and really committing to new admins to make this easier. So you'll see additional enhancements over the next couple of releases. So we're pretty excited about that. Pete, you talked about custom onboarding, so I definitely want to walk through that experience as well. I do want to show one more thing before we jump off the Learning Center. So we are pre-release, so there are a few things that aren't totally fully baked. You'll see the last few enhancements coming in the next couple patches before full production rollout. But one thing that I do want to highlight is our first move towards a Trailhead connected learning experience in the app. So here I'm in my personal org, and what you're seeing in my Learning Center is that my earned Trailhead badges will actually be displayed as a part of my Learning Center experience. Here, right now, I'm kind of displaying some badges that I haven't earned. This will be actually filtered to my Einstein Analytics assets, or Einstein Analytics badges. So I'll be able to see my Trailhead progress here in the Learning Center. And for the badges that I haven't earned yet, I'll be able to drill right in and be transported to Trailhead to engage in those areas. So we're really excited about this, bringing Trailhead into the app for just some more dynamic and gamified learning.
I have about 200 users.
Mm-hmm.
Can I link to the right one like I can when I manage Trailhead Playgrounds? Or, I mean, it's less of an issue as a consultant because I hop from org to org. I don't necessarily need to log into my client's org and see how many badges I have. But as a customer who perhaps has multiple Salesforce instances that they maintain,
Mm-hmm.
Is there a linkage mechanism? Do you give it a Trailhead account? How does it find your user?
So that's a great question. So right now, this is our first stepping stone. So the mechanics are that we're actually looking up your Trailhead profile by your email. So if we don't return a Trailhead account because, for example, you use a different email for your Trailhead profile, then we're just not going to show that container. And that's just for the MVP in the winter release. In spring, we're looking actually towards a more sophisticated connection to Trailhead, where we will prompt a login to allow you to unify your Trailhead profiles. Pete, I'm sure you're familiar that there is kind of one singular Trailblazer identity, and users are empowered to kind of manually unify all of their accounts against that Trailblazer profile. So we will help facilitate that handoff in the next release. But right now, for just simplicity's sake, if your user email for that particular org doesn't map to a Trailhead account, we just won't show it to avoid confusion. But if it does, we're going to display your badges.
So at this point, Katie and I talked about the roadmap for the next couple of releases, and I came up with a billion crazy ideas that are probably never going to see the light of day, and we both agreed it didn't really have much value in a Winter 20 release video, so I clipped that part out.
All right, Pete, let's do some custom onboardings. We're going to jump in my demo video onboarding dashboard. One of the biggest challenges for our users is that when you may train your end users with, you do hands-on sessions, you produce all this content, you create one-pagers, you record videos, and then they can kind of, either die on the vine or they get lost in some repository. And a user, when they're looking at your dashboard and trying to remember how to interact with it, then has to go find the associated content or remember the training. And we want to make that easier. And so we've started to do that this release, in the summer release. What you likely noticed in your summer experience was that when you were building your dashboard, if you clicked on a widget, in your widget property panel, you had a brand new, shiny onboarding section. In the GA version of this feature, you would notice that this onboarding section just allows you to put in a YouTube asset. So it would say video title, video embed URL, but we also released a pilot experience which allows you to actually leverage that same custom onboarding experience and put in any URL. One of the things that's most exciting about this is that if you leverage single sign-on for your Salesforce experience as well as your other kind of portals within your organization, you can actually point to content that's in your media center or anything else behind that same single sign-on requirement or credentials and embed them in your dashboard, and your end user will be able to consume that material. So just as a demo here, I have included a Vidyard video, not YouTube, Vidyard. And in the winter release, one of the enhancements that we added was the ability to preview your content. So instead of having to preview the dashboard and then see how it views for the end user, I can actually preview it right here from my builder interface. It's that same draggable, resizable, persistent video modal, which is really valuable. Additionally, let's actually show you how this works with just a Google Doc, for example. So I am going to open up, let me open up my sample dashboard here. I'm jumping over to my personal org where I actually have the same single sign-on in between my Google asset as well as my Salesforce org. So in my sample dashboard here, I'm going to edit my dashboard. I'm going to click on my widget that I want to add onboarding to, and let's go with Google Doc. For those who love customer academies, here is a customer academy doc. Or actually, why don't we point to my Google links? This one's more fun. Plop that in. I'm going to preview it, make sure it works. That looks great. And then I'm going to preview my dashboard. Now, as an end user, when I view this dashboard and I want to know what this widget is telling me, I can actually go to my widget action menu, and if an onboarding asset has been attached to this widget, I'll have a learn option here. Selecting learn launches that modal, and it's that same resizable, persistent video modal. And in this case, I'm actually linking to or displaying a Google Doc that is private in my org within my dashboard experience. So this is the same way you could point to your media center. We have customers that use videos in Google Drive, folks who use Vidyard, PDFs, what have you. You could even point to a URL. And so this is a really powerful way to put the learning content that you have available in your org right in the context of your dashboard. Additionally, let's say you've recorded a training for your for your entire org, and you actually want to include a link to that training in your dashboard, but it's not necessarily relevant to a single widget. We encourage users to actually use a text widget or or you could use a container and attach that onboarding to your widget. So here, let's say I call it help for this dashboard. I've put this in a larger container, so I'm going to add onboarding to the container. Let me grab, I'm just going to use a YouTube video because why not? Oh, let's preview that. Looks good. Just going to Rickroll everyone. Feels right. And here I can actually have that video. So what our users have done is actually include the recording of a training session in and attach it to a text widget or an image widget as part of the dashboard. So this is a really creative way to make sure that multiple resources that you want to provide are linked and readily accessible via the dashboard. So as I mentioned, this expansive feature is in pilot right now. It will be pilot through the winter release. We would be extremely excited if we have additional participants in the pilot. It's pretty low maintenance. We'd be happy to flip on the permissions to allow you to experiment with this. So feel free to contact me, ping me in the community, and I would be more than happy to work with you to get you enabled.
Just wanted to call out that you do actually need to use the YouTube embedded syntax for this.
Yep.
It's not your standard just go to a YouTube video and copy it, but if you just Google YouTube embed syntax and then just swap out the ID of the video, there's the first search result is going to give you the embedded formatting. The one restriction of what we have current state is that it does have to be hosted on YouTube. Even if it's unlisted, it can't actually be truly private. So that's kind of what the whole push for the pilot program is, to get this into different places where you can, kind of have more of an ownership of that material. At this point, we went on yet another random roadmap tangent.
All right, let's transition into a quick overview of Home. So in the winter release, users are going to see a brand new homepage. This is a personalized launching point into Einstein Analytics. Don't worry, we didn't move your cheese. All of the great list views that you're used to still exist. That your main landing page that you used to enter into Einstein Analytics on before has always been called Recents, but it really has always served you as an all items list. So in the next week or so, we will be updating this name to reflect that. It'll be called All Items, so it'll be easier for you to find everything that you're looking for. All of those same asset filters still persist. You're able to browse in the same way. But what Home is here to do is actually make picking up where you left off much easier. So what you'll see in your new homepage is a preview of your recent dashboards, the last dashboards that you interacted with. Here, the tiles have just sort of a placeholder image, but that will be the actual dashboard preview in your production environment. So you'll be able to disambiguate between the dashboards that you've been engaging with. Additionally, one of my favorite new features available here is favorites. So for those of you who are familiar with Salesforce, you've been able to favorite reports and records. But now in winter, you'll be able to favorite Einstein Analytics assets as well. So as you can see here, I've got apps that I've added to my favorites. I've got a lens. I've got a dashboard. So I can really take the assets that are the most important to me and bring them front and center in my homepage. Here in this My Analytics section, I have a preview of the top 5 assets in each of my kind of key list views. So my top 5 favorites, the top 5 shared with me, my top 5 created by me. These are ordered by most recently used or most recently interacted with. So these list views will change based on the way that you're interacting with Einstein Analytics. But you should be able to, again, see the material that is surfaced to you based on your most recent engagements. Now, I know many of us have assets that we don't necessarily interact with every day, but they're important to us. So one way to make sure that they're always at the forefront of your mind is to add them to your favorites. But we've also introduced a much more prominent search bar here, so that if you don't see what you need immediately, you can dive right into search and service that material as well. I do want to quickly spend a second on favorites. So as I said, favorites is an extension of core favorites. These assets are available the top 5 are visible in my home tab, but I have a favorites page where I can view a much longer list of those assets. And then when I'm in my core experience, my same favorites list now also includes those same Einstein Analytics assets. So you'll see that I've got my forecast dashboard, my water usage lens that I favorited as well. And as I manage my favorites here, if I change the order of priority, for example, that same order will be reflected in my favorites page.
So what you're telling me is I have a mechanism to say that analytics are my favorites and move them all the way to the top of my favorites?
I am saying that. The other thing I want to point out too is that what I showed is you can access those favorites from your favorite menu, but I can also add to my favorites when I'm in the core Salesforce experience by using that same favorite star. So here I am on my favorite Learning Adventure app homepage, and I'm going to favorite this dashboard by clicking the star. Well, that's a nice little catch there. This is a dashboard. It is being added as a dashboard to my favorites list. As you can see, when I added that favorite to my list in core, it now appears as well in my favorites list in my analytics menu. So there is that same crossover between your experience, whether you're in the chat, whether you're in the tab, or whether you're in the studio. Your favorites are accessible, which we think is a huge improvement in usability and just making sure that the stuff that's most important to you is also what's most accessible to you. Couple of notes about favorites. Discovery stories are not favoritable in the winter release. That will be coming in spring. So hold on, sit tight for that. We are planning for it. And many folks have asked, well, what about my pinned apps? What happens there? Well, as part of your upgrade to the new release, we will migrate your pinned apps to favorites. So your favorites will, or your pinned apps will become favorited apps. From in the pinned apps world, you were only able to pin apps. So once they become a part of your favorite set, you'll want to kind of go through and sort of manage what you've pinned and decide whether you wanted the full app or whether you wanted a dashboard or a lens or a data set that's contained within it. You'll have the power to get to that level of granularity. So you're really just having a list of the stuff that's most important to you instead of relying on the app as a whole.
Awesome, Katie. Thanks for coming on the channel and thanks for everything you had to share with us. We're really looking forward to the Winter 20 release and beyond. And I totally forgot to record my outro, but that's what post is for. So make sure to tune in next time where we're going to be talking about Data Prep 2.0. It's all about recipes and the different advanced joins that we can do there and some of the awesome functionality that we've gotten in this new update. And if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, tell a friend, and as always, thanks for watching.